Shari and Mike have been wedding photographers for over 2 decades, and their unique perspective is born from a blend of Shari's technical artistry and Mike's raw, immersive storytelling abilities. Known for capturing authentic, emotional moments with intentionality and creativity, together they've built a style that resonates deeply with their couples. In our conversation, they reflect on the wisdom gained over the years, emphasizing the value of immersing themselves in the day, prioritizing the client experience, and defining success in their own terms. Whether it's through light, connections, or candid moments, Shari and Mike's approach transforms each wedding into a beautiful narrative of real life and celebration. So if this sparked ideas for your own work, be sure to connect with them online and join us at ARC to experience their insights in person. Let's take that next step in refining your craft together at ARC. Welcome back to the ARC Creative Podcast. Shari and Mike, how you doing?
We're good.
We're good. Happy to be back.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Great. Yeah, totally. Appreciate both of you and your time and energy. And I wanted to kick off with a question around wisdom that you've gained from being wedding photographers, because your presentation at ARC in the conference is just around a month away from it now. And you've been photographers collectively for over, I would say, 20 years. Shari, I think you said you started in 2003-ish, and then Shari and Mike, the brand, and you both together as a company started in 2010. And a lot of the photographers who are coming to ARC have been in business for maybe 2 or 3 years, right? Some of them started just before COVID, and then they went through COVID and they're still here. Some of them started maybe a few years after COVID, whenever COVID ended. I mean, that's a different talking point. But if you were to start now, what advice would you give that photographer, knowing what you know over the last 20 plus years that you know now? But if you just started a couple of years ago, what is a piece of wisdom that they should consider?
There's a lot.
Only
one.
Yeah, just what comes to mind, because I know that there's obviously so much and all the journeys that a photographer will go through for sure, but just kind of something to consider being a younger photographer in the industry.
Yeah, this one's an interesting thought because like so much of where we're at today and the way that we shoot and how we document and all that is thanks to the journey that we've been on. And that's all the hard times that we've gone through and the challenges, not just the good stuff or like positive things. It's all of that. So like to give someone advice so you avoid making the mistakes we made, that can sometimes be good, of course, because there's some mistakes you definitely want to avoid. But part of who we are and formed our business is from some of the mistakes that we made and some of the challenges we've had along the way. So questions like this are always interesting because it's like, I don't want to take all of your challenges away because that is really formative in who you are and how you do things.
Totally.
But on a practical sense, I would say one thing that I wish someone had maybe more pushed in us or thought about was like, take care of your body. And we're not very good at this. We're still learning that. But even like your arms, like, you know, when you start dealing with like tennis elbow and like stuff like that, you know, like stretch, make sure you're taking care of your ligaments and stuff like that from the get-go if you're going to do this for the long haul. From a real practical sense,
that's great.
I think that's your whole body, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I've gone through a lot of mental health challenges in this job, and this job does require a lot of you, both physically and mentally, emotionally, especially if you're the type of person that goes all in on something. So I think taking care of your whole body is very important. We're not good at this. We're still not good at this 20 years in, but making time for rest and enjoyment of life. That's partially why we've made big decisions in the last year, is to push ourselves towards that. So that's a big one. I think also just like trusting the process. Like I know we all have like this destination of where we want to get in our business, but I think it's about enjoying the journey, knowing that along the way you're going to pick up a lot of nuggets that are going to help you get to the next steps. And so if we always just try to get to the destination as fast as we can, I think we miss out on a lot of the growth that happens personally in your business, all those things. Like a practical thing is like, there's lots of programs out there now like that edit for you and call for you and do all those things. But there's also something really great about doing those things at the start to learn how editing works. Like culling for us, like in the beginning especially, is like, it's a really good way of looking at your work, of really dissecting like, oh, if I would have moved them just like a little bit further this way, they would have been in better light, which would have made a better photo. We learned a lot that way, was actually like critiquing our work as
still do.
We still do.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So that's just like a practical thing, is learn as much as you can, especially in those first few years. Experiment, do all the things. So you learn the camera, you learn the process, all the back end stuff. And then, I think that would be one of them. And then my other thing, I'm going to give one more piece. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm not really a talker, but here I am. Define success quite early of what it looks like for you. I think this industry, because it can be very noisy and people are doing a variety of things. And I think it can be really important to know what you're going after and what success looks like for you.
Because we always think there's a blank state. And we talked about this a little bit. Well, we've talked about this a few times at different things, but it's really important that like you define your success for you and not what the world's telling you what success is, and not what the industry's telling you what success is, or not what this guy on TikTok told you what success is. Like, it's important that you know what that means for you and be okay with that, own it and live in that, because we can get really distracted, like where we're like, I guess I need to shoot destination weddings to be successful, but maybe you hate traveling. Maybe you're afraid of airplanes. Maybe you have a lot of family that you just want to keep close. Maybe you're a bit of a homebody. Like, that's okay. It's important that it is defined for who you are. And then also, I think important to be flexible in what success means. Because I
think just like being okay to redefine it as you grow as a person. What we thought success was before we had Augie, for example.
Or not even what we thought success, success was for us at that time.
Totally.
Yeah.
So if we had kept that same definition of it, it wouldn't have served us well, because we have grown as humans. We added a child to our family. So we had to like redefine what that looked like for us. I feel like we're constantly trying to figure it out.
Because if you get too stuck on that, then all of a sudden your success can become a failure or can become a burden to you, and it's not same thing that was so life-giving and gratifying and fulfilling 3 years ago turn into a weight, so that's why it's important to stay flexible and stay constantly evaluating and assessing who you are in your life as we grow as humans and photographers and everything. Yeah.
Love that.
Oh yeah. And celebrate your wins too. Celebrate your wins. That's another good one. When you win, when things are good, celebrate. Don't just move on to the next thing. Take a minute, get that dopamine hit, live in it for a minute, enjoy it, and then you can move on to the next thing.
It's so true. And I love that you shared that, because a lot of people don't celebrate their wins. And they're like, I had a friend ask recently, how do you celebrate your achievements? And what does that look like? And I think for anyone listening, think about what that looks like for yourself, because you want to, as you said, Shari, enjoy the journey as you go along. And those are the things that are going to help you enjoy the journey. And you'll be rewarding yourself for those wins. And it's not externally based. You're not looking for outside validation. This is you validating yourself for your journey, which is so powerful. And to know that early on is beautiful. Yeah, I love what you shared. And I want to go back to something that you said, Mike, at the beginning, which was around not taking away from people's challenges or obstacles or things that come, because with perspective later on, you can look back and see it actually as a blessing. Whereas in the moment, it was like the worst thing ever. And it was you were like crying and just wishing that wasn't your life. But then a couple of years later, you look back at it and you're actually thankful for that challenge, because you had to grow in a certain way and evolve and tweak things in your system. And now you're stronger for it, and you're grateful perhaps that you learned it then rather than much later. So that perspective shift, having that is really beautiful. And the key thing that I took away from what you shared was to really reflect and be aware of yourself and your journey and what the target is, what you're heading towards, because then you're not going to be distracted and you're not going to be looking for that external kind of validation, which is so easy because we're bombarded by things every single day that make you want to compare.
Yeah,
absolutely. And even, like we still even struggle with it. So it's like, it's a very noisy industry. And so it's just like learning a lot inward of like,
and then to have, like you said, to have that target or goal set that you can just like lock in on when all that, it's a lot easier to not turn your head or look when you have something to focus on, like, into,
exactly. Because then you can just enjoy someone else's success and be like, oh, I'm so happy for you doing that thing. That's not for me, because my eyes on this target, that's where I'm heading towards. So, and then in the future, that person or whatever may celebrate your success, but if you're celebrating it as you go along, amazing. So I love that we kicked off with that. That's really beautiful. And for anyone out there listening, you're listening to photographers, Shari and Mike, who've been doing it in the game for like over 20 years. And if you were to have a time machine though, and you were to go back and you can only share one thing with young Shari in 2003 and young Mike in 2010, what would you say to them? And it can only be one thing. Based on what you just said, what's like the one thing that you would say to help them in their journey of the next 20 years? I'll go with you first, Mike. What would you say to Mike in 2010?
Stretch.
I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Mike, are you feeling your age?
I am giving I
feel like all your answers have to do with your...
I love that. And for anyone who hasn't experienced Mike on the dance floor as well, because I see there's probably... that might resonate with people in different ways, but Mike is the guy who always will be on the dance floor, breaking and, dancing and bringing the energy to the party, which is so great. And I know you've done that at weddings as well and stuff. And it's so when you say that word, that's what pops into my mind. But I also can see it from just the general wedding photographer pains on a Sunday after a big Saturday wedding. And it's like,
or maybe I'm talking deeper and stretch yourself. Stretch your... Hey, maybe there's a little more to what's going on anyways.
I like it.
Yeah. Really good.
Nice, Mike.
Yeah.
I like it, Mike. Thank you.
Well, the first thing that popped into my head was go to therapy. That was my first one.
Yeah.
And then also, though, I think a big one for me is like, don't let fear hold you back. That's always been like the resounding theme in my life. But I would like to tell Shari from 2010.
2003.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Do the thing that scares you. Do not be afraid of failing, because growth lives in that place. And so
that's a good one.
Thanks, Scott.
I like it.
It's a good one.
I like it. Can we talk a bit about therapy real quick? Because I feel like this 10 years ago, if somebody said they were going to therapy and things like that, I think it would have made me quite uncomfortable, because that was something that I saw on TV that only celebrities maybe do. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh, if you're seeing a therapist, then fill in the blank, some negative thoughts may come, which I don't want to share right now. But I have a therapist. I think it's one of the best investments I've ever had in my life. The wisdom and tools I've been given because of it have helped me tremendously. And sometimes I wonder how in this world that we currently live in, how people don't have a therapist. It's like, how do you navigate life, sometimes, because have somebody who will just listen and you can process, and then they can give you their take and give you a tool on your journey. Where would Luke Skywalker be without Yoda? It's like he gave him his wisdom. That was his life coach / therapist, I guess. Well, he would only say very few words too, like you, Mike. But it's...
I know what we're talking about, because I've never seen Star Wars.
That's all right. It's all good. It's all good. Yoda essentially is the guru, the guide, who helps Luke Skywalker on his journey to be the hero. And so he's like a sage, wise sage. And so...
help Luke.
Yeah, so... Exactly, yeah. So could you expand on therapy and why you would recommend that?
Because I should have done it a very long time ago. And my whole thing about the fear thing too, they go hand in hand, because although I say every year I need to go to therapy, I have not yet done it. So they go hand in hand, Satch. And I would be a far better human if I had gone to therapy. Sure. No, not far better human. I would have more tools to handle the times when life is a little tricky.
Yeah, I think you'd be kinder to yourself too.
I think I would be kinder to myself, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, like, well, and there still is a lot of stigmas around therapy, but I do think it was viewed and applied differently back in the day compared to today. And part of the reason for that is because back in the day, we had more support systems around us. It's like more and more we've become isolated, even though we're more connected than ever. We're becoming more isolated than ever. So, and that's both from like getting into like digital world, social media, and locking in on that, and then also just the hustle and how much we have to hustle and the grind that it is, that like that time. We don't prioritize, our world today doesn't prioritize real deep human connection, like it's like at most it prioritizes quick, shallow connection, right? And so why I think therapy maybe has become, come more to the forefront, and because thankfully it is getting more acceptable as it should be, because that gives people an opportunity to go deep where they don't maybe have that in some of their lives on an everyday sense anymore, because to be honest, just don't have the people there or the time or the ability, like because of that, which is a problem, which is like, okay, that's maybe not a good shift in humanity. Maybe we should get back to like, but anyways, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Moving from England to Canada and all my support bases, family, people that I would speak to, cousin and brother, mother, father, everyone is back there, and then we're in a different time zone. And when you want to speak to someone, you don't have that because they're asleep. So you're not going to wake them up, right? So having somebody consistent that you can share with is great. So you said that you haven't yet, Shari. What would, as long as you're comfortable, sharing this, but what would make you or help you take that step? Because somebody might be listening to this and saying, oh, maybe I'll consider that, but they're on the fence too. So is there something that is potentially going to help you make that next step?
This is something I need to work on, obviously, but it's the getting started for me is always anything new, anything that's unfamiliar. I just sometimes am like, right, Mike? That's me.
Yeah. I know I should. I know I want.
I know I should. And I know I want to.
It just stops there because totally. I'm going to go to just what's familiar and sort of thing. Part of it's just the prioritizing and time.
That's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just have prioritizing yourself is really hard, especially the mom now. It's like Aki's the priority. And then it's like Mike, our clients, all the things that we need to do. And then it's like Shari, she gets the leftovers, which I understand is not the good thing. But so therapy is definitely still always at the top of my list every year.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, Thatch. It's going to happen. I'm going to get brave. I'm going to do it. This, now that it's on the podcast, it's like, it's kind of
there's some accountability there. Yeah. That's part of it too.
You can send it to me back in January. You'd be like, Shari, did you go to therapy? Perfect.
Anytime if you ever want to talk about it or anything, let me know, because I thought it was going to be a certain way, and then I realized it was actually just kind of like this, just talking to someone and having a conversation and them asking really good questions so that I can do the work to dig, and then they beautifully summarize it at the end, tell me what I've told them because they've asked such great questions, and then they're like, oh, and here's this thing that you can also use to help you along the way as you're navigating or processing X, Y, Z. And that's literally what it's like. It's literally like this conversation. My experience so far, other people may say different things, but getting somebody as well that comes recommended and that you've heard good things about is key, and getting along with them. So I think it's like a first date. It's always nerve wracking because you don't know what it's going to be like, but it's been so great. And actually I took a break. I just stopped going for like a year because you like you said, you get busy, you're taking care of different things, etc. And then one day it just hit me that I just need to book a call with my therapist. And I just sent them an email and said, when are you available? And then they sent me some dates and I booked one. And then it was like in the calendar and it was done. And it was kind of that simple, because when we book a meeting with a client, we attend those meetings, right? It's in the calendar, we show up. And that's what it was like for me. It's just, I know this is good for me. Just pull the Band-Aid off, do it. And then you turn up to the meeting. And so anyway, I'm here if you ever want to talk about anything.
I appreciate it. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. How would you say you've kept yourselves inspired as a couple throughout those years? Because 20 years and 14 years since you joined, that would have shaped things, and the industry's changed in many ways. And yet it's still the same in many ways. But how have you stayed inspired creatively? Because I imagine over the years you may have gone through peaks and troughs. And how have you navigated that?
Thankfully, we have each other. I always say we have the benefit of having each other as we have changed and grown and built this business. We have this like built-in best friend, shooting partner, creative brains to just like feed off of, which I think is a definite benefit of being a couple in this industry. It's definitely come with obviously a lot of like things to work through, because we're also like partners in life, we're parents, so it's definitely a challenge, has always been a challenge to separate the business, the creative side with like life side. And so that's been the challenge. The whole like staying inspired part. I know Mike and we chat about this often about like, what are those things? For us, it's like, I always felt like sometimes ashamed that I wasn't like a very like artsy person. Like I don't watch movies. I'm sorry. I don't.
Story Jack.
Like I fall asleep. Like I put a movie on and I'm done.
I think like 5 minutes, like she's gone. Yeah.
So I have not been able to draw inspiration from movies. So for me personally, inspiration comes from people's stories have always been my main thing. And I think that's why I've always like drawn from like my grandpa is probably my biggest inspiration in life. Sadly, we lost him in March. But his life was just like an inspiration, but also creatively, he inspired me to not only like document life for other people, but to also document life for my family. And so when my grandma died a long time ago, I didn't have very many photos of her. I had kind of just started kind of getting into photography, and my perspective was just different back then. When you first get started, you're young and I don't know, you think everybody will live and time is different. But the older you get, time becomes very like precious. And so after she passed, I made it my like mission to like document his life. And so for myself, for my family, but also at the time we didn't have children, but it was also like if I wanted my kid or kids to know him. And so he has inspired me. And then because of that, I'm just really inspired by human connection, by human stories. Like I love documentaries. I love listening to like inspiring people on podcasts. So it's less like visual and it's more just like, I feel very like connected to human and wanting to document as much of that as possible. And so I would say like that's my biggest inspiration, which seems funny because it's not like a visual thing.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, because you're also a wedding photographer that documents stories, and you have that connection and you're looking for that story, and you share their lives through those images and your own through your own images of documenting your family and what you shared about your grandfather. So it makes a lot of sense, because that whatever it is that inspires you to create is your creativity. Yeah. So it makes perfect sense.
Totally.
Yeah. A lot of it's just found in life, like everyday life. And I think that's what's been interesting about watching the way that we document weddings or people's stories has evolved as we've evolved, So I think it's very much just inspired by our lives and our journeys and walking through life and different kinds of things. And we've noticed some of those shifts of inspiration along the way with everything from like having a kid or traveling or working through stuff as a couple, other, family stuff, like Shari said, that really like flows into how we're documenting on wedding days and how we're capturing and what we're seeing within that. So I would say that. And then like on a more practical sense, like when we're driving around, I would say we notice light. We definitely notice light. So it's more, again, just in journeying through life in the everyday, but we will see ways that light's falling and light's moving and stuff like that. And that actually gets us excited. We're often like, I wish we had a couple and we could just put them in that or something like that, But then I think when on the wedding day, when you see similar light and stuff like that, then you do have the opportunity to create something within that. So I would say like on a practical level too, just again, journeying through every day, but seeing the way that light and shadow is falling and working every day, probably in a practical sense, gets us excited for to photograph people. So
true.
Yeah. So it's a combination of like learning who people are, and then how can we capture them using light and through a unique perspective and compositionally and stuff like that, which is interesting. Like it's funny, like if you talk about her background in photography, here I'm going to go off the rails a little bit here, but like Shari, she started in 2003, but like Shari has some training and stuff like that. She went to school, took some classes. She started on film. She worked at a portrait studio, like stuff like that. So very, a lot of the practical side. Oh, she sure did.
Oh, I sure did.
A lot of the practical side of photography, whereas my photography background was no rules. Like I would just grab some disposable cameras and we would go to a punk rock show and I would just without any rules or thoughts of composition, just be photographing the madness and just the feel, So like Shari's original photos, you can look back and you're like, wow, that is a classic, well done, well thought out photo. And mine are like, man, that looks like it was a lot of fun, that chaos, right? And so that's kind of like the roots of where we came from. And so it's been interesting watching that really flow into the way that we document. We love to like capture the feel and the emotion of it all, but then we try to also document it through thinking about compositionally and how can this emotion that's super fun also be documented really well and photographed really consciously and thought out, yet still very spontaneous and very candid, like that sort of thing. Yeah. And I think that's what we really seek out when we're creating too. So yeah, sorry, bit of a rabbit trail, but.
No, well, you answered basically one of my questions, which was, could you describe your style for anyone who doesn't really know it? And I feel like that was just rewind about 69 seconds, perfect. and that was it. And we know the inspiration where that came from as well. So that was great. And when I think of you both as well and stories and inspiration, I always think of traveling and just the journeys that you went on pre having Augie and then even with Augie and then at weddings. And I always just loved your travel photography as well and just how many adventures you went on. And so, and I heard that in your response as well, that travel is an inspiration. It's definitely been an inspiration of mine as well. And I can see that in your work. What do you think sets apart a great wedding photographer from a good wedding photographer?
You go.
Okay. Deal. I think probably the biggest thing is being able to forget that you're there to take photos and being more that you're there to celebrate the couple that's there and be a part of their wedding and be a part of their experience. If you can just trust in your ability and know that you have the ability because you've practiced, you know everything, you know your gear, and you can just trust in your actual photographic ability, then it can free you up and free your mind up to be more present on the day and more involved in the day and conscious of everything that's going on and the experience that your clients are having. I think that's what really takes it. Like the best compliment that we can get isn't necessarily that our couples love their photos. It's that they loved their actual experience of capturing those photos and on the wedding day. Photos often for a lot of our couples that we talk to aren't their favorite thing to do is go on photo shoots. And we hear from lots of people that we're really hard to photograph and stuff like that. And then if at the end of the day, they're so thankful that we were there and that we made their experience better, that the photo time was super fun and actually enhanced their day as opposed to being a chore. Like if you can take it where like going to do portraits or doing family photos or doing those sort of things, if you can take it from being a chore from them to just another highlight of their day, I think that's kind of an elevating factor as a photographer. If at the end of the day, if they haven't seen any photos and they're singing your praises and they're so thankful you were there and they're hugging and they're crying because that experience, and they haven't even seen a photo yet. They haven't seen what you were hired to do yet.
Totally.
Technically, right? Mm-hmm. Then I think that is really it, I would say. And that's what we've really strived for and tried to grow.
Yeah.
So
totally. And so how does the photographer who's listening to this, who has the couples who they probably think it still feels like a chore to them though. I don't know how to take it to that next level where it's an experience now and they're having fun. I want my photographers to say that was actually really fun and I didn't think it was going to be like that. What is the switch or what is the way that you feel you've been able to do that for your couples?
I think just the more you can immerse yourself in a day, almost like you're like a guest, obviously be professional still, but I think the more you can not be the I'm the photographer and more just immerse yourself. We chat with guests. We chat when I'm doing family photos, I try to ham it up with the parents. I'll
sometimes stand on my head to get kids to pay attention.
He does. I think it's just going above and beyond, being helpful if you need to be helpful. Like one of our last weddings, I was the seamstress. I had to sew the groom's jacket, like because nobody else knew how to sew. And so I think it's just those things. I think it's just realizing that photos are a part of it. If the photos are kind of like the cherry on the top of the dessert, it's like, but the cake is actually like the experience in which giving your clients. I feel like that's what takes you from just being like, you can take a great photo and you can be like a great wedding photographer. Like, I feel like.
And so I think the key to get that, because you said immerse yourself in it, and that's good. And one of the keys to immersing yourself in it is that you're not thinking about what your flash settings are, or you're not thinking about like, oh, I don't know about the location because the light's different than what I thought, or that you are trained and have honed your skill well enough that you can be confident that whatever scenario you get thrown into, you can capture that and document it from a photographer's standpoint. Because then again, that frees you up to immerse yourself in the situation, because you know the photography's covered. You got this, you know that, right? So you just kind of almost have to be okay to like not think too much about taking photographs on the wedding day. That's more of your reflex. That's more of your habit. And then you can think more about, immersing yourself in, being a part of it all, giving this amazing experience to clients and their guests, and that sort of thing. I think so. So part of it is the pre-prep and knowing that you're confident with your camera and your skill.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we're talking about what separates a great photographer from a good photographer, and it's kind of embedded in that you're already striving to be a great photographer, but be so good that that's actually not your focus. Your focus is on making the experience for the couple and their friends and family the best experience that they can have. And when you focus on that, the photos are going to happen, and know and trust in your skills, but make the experience for them epic, and believe that you will get great photos, because you will, because everyone's having a great time.
You'll get better photos even because everyone is more comfortable and having a great time, which means your photos will be better. It's a win-win.
Exactly. On that note, the conference is coming up. You spoke about your style. We kicked off with some perspectives and some wisdom. The title of your presentation is excellent. If you can share the title of your presentation for anyone that is coming to ARC and maybe not familiar with the presentation, what is the title? And tell us about this talk. What can we expect?
Well, we titled it might change, we'll see. But we titled it 100 Lessons in 100 Weddings.
Ish.
That's I think for us is like we want people to leave with like a lot of what we have learned along the way. We've shot a lot of weddings. I have no idea at this point how many it is, but it's a lot. And
I am going to try to count before the talk, but we'll see.
So I think it's just like we've learned a lot, and I think there's just something really great about sharing the things that you've learned and hoping that people can take that and either apply it to where they're at in the journey, help them to like take those steps further along. And for us, it's like we want it to be like funny. It's going to be lots of nuggets. It's hopefully going to be inspirational. We're excited.
Yeah.
Right, Mike?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you laugh, you take lots of notes, and you cry, then we win. That's what we're going for. We're just basically excited to kind of sort of thing of this 20-year journey of shooting weddings and all that sort of thing. I guess from like a couple of old dogs to maybe help these young cats coming up.
I love what you shared there, and I think it's really beautiful that somebody who's just started, because if you've been in the industry for 2 or 3 years, you're still at the beginning. And if you see this as a career, right, and you want to have a long career as a photographer, so to listen to photographers that have been doing it for 20 years, who've been through so many changes in the industry and still doing it at the top of their game, in my eyes, I think that's such a blessing to have people, creatives like yourselves, be able to share that and just know that it's going to make a huge impact. If people take 1 or 2 takeaways from that talk and they actually apply it, it will make so much of a difference to their careers. And those are the photographers that have helped us along the way as well, right? When we first started out, we were listening to people and taking notes and learning and growing from that as well. So if you were to describe a memory from ARC in the past, because you've come back, have you spoken at ARC a couple of times? I know you've definitely done the one keynote, but I feel like maybe you did.
I think it's just one.
Okay, so you've done the one. It feels like it's been more, but you've also photographed the parties. We've had, I just remember that photo, that double exposure of Hugh Whitaker with the horns coming up, and honestly, guys, we're going to look, I hope 10, 15 years from now, not that we'll retire from work or maybe in that time, but now I'm making us all sound really old. But I hope that in the future we can look back, sit around the fireplace and just like look at those photos and just remember just such epic times because they were so good. And I'm so glad you photographed that energy of that. And I know I'm going to be looking at them for years to come and just remembering how amazing it was to be a wedding photographer in Vancouver. So thank you for documenting that. And you've spoken at ARC. What would you say to a photographer that's maybe on the fence about ARC, or if they're coming to ARC even this year? We have around 70 of the photographers have never been to ARC before, which is amazing.
Wild.
Excited to meet
I think
these other photographers. What would you say?
For me, like throughout her career, probably top 3 highlights has been doing the conference circuit, like attending conferences, going. And just because the people that you meet and the relationship you can form at these things is pretty amazing, especially you're going somewhere, you're surrounded by people that are like excited, that are with similar passion, you know, you can connect, you can like relate with these people. When COVID kind of shut that all down, that was really, for me, that was probably one of the hardest parts. Because prior to that, like Shari and I were probably going to three or 4 events a year and just like attending and having a great time and connecting with people. So I guess probably the biggest thing though, if this is your first or something to remember, Shari, this is kind of what you had said when we were chatting, is probably the first conference that we went to. We went with like big notebooks and ready to like revolutionize our business and change everything and all that sort of thing. And then left feeling maybe a little bit disappointed. The party was great. I had a great time at the party, but maybe feeling like a little bit disappointed or like you did something wrong because you didn't come out necessarily like, I'm going to do everything. And some people go to conferences and take the notes and they do feel that way, which is awesome. But everyone's conference experience will be a little bit different. Don't go into preconceived notions, decide that you're just going to be immersed in it. Again, I would say the same thing. Just go be there. You might find one nugget that you like that will change your whole business from one thing that someone says in a talk. You might not remember what any of the talks are at all, but you come out of there with some relationships and connections that totally change your perspective or give you opportunities in the future that you never thought you would have had. You might just go to a really cool party and have so much fun and feel so fulfilled that you cry at the last song because you just are just so excited to be around people. You might go in there and feel like you didn't learn anything, and then a month later your brain finally has time to like sort through everything, and you're like, wow, I am shooting even different without even knowing it. You know, like so that I would just say, just go and be there and immerse yourself in it, and the rest, as far as expectations go, kind of just throw them out the window and be there and let it be what it is for you, and it'll be amazing.
I love what you said there, because it really is about being open to the experience. It was the conference is called The Experience, and it's that for a reason, because it's about being immersed in this and being open to your experience. One of the things that I was just speaking to Miranda Addison, he's also speaking at the conference, and I said I went to a conference and I literally felt like I was learning nothing, and you were there too. You both were there too, because we had conversations about this, and it was not great in terms of investing in my business and going to it, but it inspired me to create ARC. And so I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to leave a conference and then think, maybe I could create something like this too, you know, and build something. So you just never know. You never know what you're going to get. And the reason why you're there is you may come in with, I want to do this and revolutionize my business, but then you end up leaving with a new best friend, or you have the best party ever and you realize how much you love dancing. Something random like that could happen. And, you know, you find yourself breakdancing with Mike on the dance floor.
Well, and actually another important thing too, I would say, that is unexpected, is it also might just affirm that you're doing good and you're on the right track.
Yeah,
that's like huge. You might go in thinking that all these other photographers have some magic beans or know some secrets, and then you're like, oh, they do it just like I do. Yeah. I'm on the right track. I'm doing good. There's some good value in that too.
It's powerful, and getting that affirmation, I think, is really powerful. And I think every photographer can experience that and see it in a positive way. And then you can stay inspired, set a different target maybe, and get out of the bubble of, oh, I'm playing it maybe safe because I don't know. But realizing where you are and then setting a new target, a new goal to go after is great. Beautiful. I want to end with your workshop. So you spoke about light and how you see light, and then you want to capture that on the day and bring in the story. Your workshop at ARC, which unfortunately is sold out for anyone listening. There are no tickets left, which is amazing. I love that. It sold out very quickly and people are on it. But for those who are attending, what can people expect to learn from a workshop like that?
So funny thing is, I attended a workshop back in the day. I think you were there too. Fair came to Vancouver and he had taught a workshop and it was really inspired by light, all different types. And I remember just like being a new photographer and being like, oh, like what? Like being blown away by how you can see light and create things in different light. Cause I was like playing it safe for those first few years. And that really honestly like changed the course of how I saw light and basically the course of like how we started to like shoot. And so for me, I'm really excited to now be doing a workshop about something that also inspires us now and has been instrumental in a lot of the work that we have created over the years. And so we just are excited once again to pass on some knowledge of what we have learned, what has worked, some of the trends we've taken on, some of the trends we're like, absolutely not, it's not for us. And so we're just excited for people to be able to come and to play and to experiment and to practice. Our big thing, like we've already talked about, is like the more you can experiment and get comfortable on the wedding day, you're thinking less about things and you can focus more on the emotion and the connection and all those things. And so for us, it's like we just want people to become more comfortable in all different lighting scenarios. And so, so there's going to be a lot of shooting. There'll be some teaching, some practical things on what we do, the lights that we do use. Like there'll just be a lot of information that way, but it will be a lot of practicing. So
there'll be an opportunity or a focus on using available light that's already there, and then a portion on creating your own light in scenarios, and not even just doing it so that you can manage light. Because we know like lighting can be a point of anxiety for a lot of people on the wedding day and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's like, really, I mean, the roots of photography, what is photography? Photography is light hitting a negative and then creating a picture. Like exposure is you're exposing light. So for us, it's like, this is like the thing of what photography is. And so to help people take it from a point of stress and anxiety or uncomfortableness into a point of opportunity and excitement and that sort of thing is kind of the goal. Is we want you to embrace light so much that you're creating using all kinds of scenarios, and no matter what kind of scenario you get thrown in, you know how to excel within that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the idea.
Love that. And I was going to say, for anyone who's not attending, what's the nugget that they can take and use so that they can be better photographers? And my answer to, based on what you said, is practice more. Just shoot. Get uncomfortable with different types of lighting scenario. Practice, and be so comfortable with that discomfort until you're more and more comfortable with it, so that on the wedding day you can relax and add to the client experience, because that's what makes great photographers.
Absolutely.
Nailed it. So good.
Awesome. Is there anything that you would add to that, or what's a takeaway for somebody who's just like, I wanted to get a ticket, I couldn't come, I'm excited to hear you speak, but what else could I do? I'm going to go out and practice, but where could I start?
First off, make sure you get your ticket for next year. But no.
I think just like the easiest, like the simplest thing that I can always say is like, look for the light, find it, and then put people in it. Just one simple thing is, don't look for just the shade. Actually look for the way light is falling in a certain place, and then put your subject in it. That would just be my my quick practical tip.
Yeah, and move around too. Like make sure, like if you shine a light directly on someone, but you move that light, it's going to change. You can also move to where the light is. So move around when you're in a scenario, like explore that scenario as well when practicing. But again, this all comes down to practice. Like you said, some of the practical ways to do that is like, I would say just move around a lot. And a part of this comes from like the way Shari and I shoot is like, Shari's usually taking a little bit more of the forefront lead, and I'm usually looking for different angles, and I'm getting high, I'm getting low. I think it was Two Man said at one of their talks that I saw one time, go up, go down, get high, get low, get dirty, or something like that. Anyway,
get dirty.
explore the opportunity within the thing we've already discovered or already found.
Yeah.
And, that sort of thing. But yeah, get out and practice, not on a wedding day, so that on your wedding day, you don't have to feel like you're practicing. You feel like you're, yeah.
Beautiful. Shari, Mike, thank you so much. I can't wait for November to hang out, see you in person, in real life. It's going to be awesome. And thank you so much for your time and for being so open. And I'm so excited. So I look forward to seeing you next month.
Well, thank you for having us. I hope we provided some value for somebody out there. And coming to ARC, we're very excited to meet you and get to hang out. So
yes,
Mike will be the old guy on the dance.
Yeah, Josh, we just want to say we love you. We're so thankful ARC is back.
Yeah.
And we cannot, again, like I said, the last conference I went to, you happened to be there. I ended up at the end of the party crying on the dance floor because it just felt so good to be surrounded by and celebrating with people again. So I cannot wait to be with you all. And if you're not coming this year, we're sad we won't see you there, but hopefully you get a ticket next time and we'll see you next year. Yeah. Can't wait. Anyways.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you so much for listening. Today's episode with Shari and Mike really reminded us of the importance of connection and capturing real moments. If their insights resonated with you, join us at ARC in November to dive deeper and refine your approach. Be sure to connect with Shari and Mike online and let's get excited for what's ahead at this year's conference. My name is Sachin Kona. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Peace.